Hello, welcome to a new week and welcome to The Morning Show with me, Martin King.
And me, Aisling O'Loughlin. Coming up today, diagnosed as bipolar at 21, Tommy Roddy was told he would be on lithium for the rest of his life.
I was a young man, 21 years old, and this was my prognosis, really. You know, take lithium for the rest of your life, or else, you know, or else there's no hope, really. That was the prognosis.
Tommy is going to be telling us how, after tapping into painful past, he's now living medication-free for almost the last 20 years.
Now, all of us will experience shyness at some point in our lives, but for those who dread social situations, it can be very debilitating. We'll be looking at how to combat shyness later.
Plus, it might look like a duck and act like a duck, but the water hen is in no way related to the duck family. We're going to be finding out about this and other fake ducks later.
But first today, at 19, Tommy Roddy felt like he was falling into a dark, dark hole. Diagnosed with bipolar disorder, so extreme were his highs and lows that doctors told him he would be on lithium for the rest of his life.
However, that has turned out not to be the case, and Tommy has been living medication-free for almost 20 years.
When I was told I'd have to take lithium, I was in hospital at the time, and it was my second period in hospital. I'd initially gone in for depression, but the second period I had gone in for elation. And I was told I'd have to take lithium for the rest of my life, that unless I took lithium, I would be at the mercy of my mood swings. In other words, I'd have downs and I'd have high points. So for me, I couldn't really understand it. When I came out of hospital 2 weeks before my 21st birthday, and I actually felt worse than before I had gone in. Because when I had gone in, I felt I had problems, I felt I had difficulties. I was in severe depression. But none of that was looked at, none of the difficulties I had. Now I was being told there's a chemical imbalance in my brain. I needed to take lithium for the rest of my life. 2 weeks before my 21st birthday, I was released from psychiatric hospital, and that was the prognosis for me.
Tommy joins us now. You're very welcome to The Morning Show, Tommy.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much for coming.
Very welcome.
Late teens, you were in dark depression. What were your thoughts?
Well, the depressions were pretty bad, in fairness. They were really low, and at my lowest point, then I used to have suicidal thoughts, and the suicidal thoughts were very strong. And I had been experiencing this for about 2 years or so.
Did you go and talk to somebody? Who was it who suggested that you should go and get some medical help?
Well, at the time, I had gone to my local GP originally, and she had given, my doctor had given me an appointment for the outpatients department. I was living in Galway at the time, and I went there to see a psychiatrist, and I remember being put on antidepressants at the time, and I was still in a pretty bad place, and it just reached a crisis point for me. There was one particular day I kind of thought, this is it. I'm not going to make it through the day. Like at that stage, the depression had been pretty bad, and I had been going through it for a few months. And so I had moved back home to my home place in Roscommon at the time, and I just asked my parents, I says, you know, take me to the hospital, the local psychiatric hospital, which was Castlereagh. And so it was either go in there, seek help of whatever description, or else I just couldn't go on, to simple as that.
And you know, you were aware throughout all this time that you really needed help, and you sought that help, but it wasn't the help that you really wanted when you actually went and got it.
Yeah, you see, the thing about it, at that time, a lot of people may be aware that you go to a psychiatrist will prescribe medication for you. But my idea of a psychiatrist at that time was a person that I could go to and talk about my problems. I remember when I went into Castlereagh at the time, the thing that struck me that every single person in there was taking medication. In the morning, the trolley would be wheeled out, we'd take the medication. And sometimes people used to have difficulties taking, you know, they didn't want to take the tablets, and I had difficulties as well at times. And if they suspected you weren't taking your medication, they'd give you a liquid, you know, in case that you tried to hide a tablet behind your tongue or something, they'd give you a liquid. So I did respond to the antidepressants at the time, and I came out of hospital 3 weeks later, and things were pretty okay. Things things began to improve for me. I was in pretty good form, you know.
But for the people around you, they thought actually his form was too good.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, over a period of time, people said to me, you know, kind of, you're a bit high, basically, was what people were saying to me. And I couldn't accept this because I had gone through a period of severe depression, suicidal thoughts, and now everything was going fantastic for me. So eventually, after a lot of persuasion, I was persuaded to go back into hospital again, and I was in there for about 9 weeks, and I was given various medication. I can't even remember the names of them at this stage, all kinds of tranquilizers, antipsychotics, I don't know what I was given. But then after a period of 9 weeks, they said, because you have gone through a low period and now you've gone through a high period, it's now turned bipolar. At the time it used to be called manic depressive. So they put me on lithium. I came out of hospital 2 weeks before my 21st birthday, and they said, you're on lithium for the rest of your life. If you don't take the lithium every day, that you'll be at the continual mercy of your mood swings, your highs and your lows.
So that is a serious 21st birthday present to get.
Yeah.
What effect did the lithium have on you on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, well, what happened actually, when I came out of hospital, I never accepted the diagnosis, and I actually, at the time I stopped taking the lithium, and I was back in Galway then about 2 years later, and I went through a severe depression, and I contacted the psychiatric unit there, and they said, have you ever had any problems before? And I said, well, yes, I was hospitalised 2 years previously in Castlerea. So they went and they got my files, and then they said, oh, you're manic depressive, you're not taking your medication. So they put me back on the lithium, but even on the lithium, I used to still get very severely depressed, and the depressions were, in my mind, every bit as bad. You know,
we have to point out that, you know, for some people who are dealing with depression, the medication does work for them. It just in your own situation, you felt that it wasn't working for you. During this time, you tried to carve out a career for yourself, and you went to teacher training college.
Yeah.
And that caused you problems.
Yeah. At the age of 27, I applied and I was accepted to St. Patrick's College in Dublin. And before that, in Galway, like, I used to get depressed maybe once a year or so, and it was severe, but I get through it. But when I came to Dublin, things got out of control, really. At that stage, I was taking my lithium, and, you know, I wasn't coping. I was struggling with the course. In fact, you know, at the time, I was really struggling with the teaching practice, and I wasn't really coping effectively. And I came back to Galway that summer then, and I knew the depression seemed to be following me around.
And how did that manifest itself? I mean, could you talk to people? Did you lock yourself away? How were you acting?
You see, the strange thing about it is that if somebody met me in quite a severe depression, as would happen, a lot of these people wouldn't have a clue, because in one sense you become an actor. You know, and like I spoke to some people afterwards, and I used to say, well, when I began to talk openly about it, and I used to say, do you remember that particular period when you met me? I said to them that I was in the severe depression at the time, and they wouldn't have a clue, because I became an actor. You know, that summer actually I was back working in Galway again, and you know, I was managing to do my work, and you know, and even when I had been in college in Dublin, like, the people around me, they wouldn't have a clue.
And would you be in flying form then at other times during that period?
No, you see, that's the thing. The only time that I ever actually went high was when I was on the antidepressants. That was the only one time in my life that I went high. Yeah, well, what I was told at the time was a high. I kind of dispute that in certain respects, but that was the only time the depressions used to come. Even on the lithium, I still used to get severely depressed.
There's credit to you for going and seeking help, even in your late teens, because an awful lot of people at that age wouldn't think of seeking help, but you did. There's a stigma attached to mental illness.
Yeah.
When you had to go, because you used to get regular blood tests because of the lithium, that stigma affected you.
Oh yeah. Yeah, like when I was working in Galway at the time, and I was in my early 20s, and every 3 months I used to have to get a blood test because of the lithium, because there was a possibility it could build up in your bloodstream, and it never actually happened to me, but if that happened you could get very sick. And the psychiatric unit in Galway is behind University College Hospital. It's at the back of the hospital. And when I was going in for my blood tests, I wouldn't walk around the back of the hospital and walk in the front door of the psychiatric unit, because I was so afraid. I was working in a job at the time dealing with the public. I was so afraid if anybody saw me, look at the nutcase kind of thing or whatever. So what I used to do is I used to go into the hospital. I used to walk through. There was a corridor linking the main hospital to the psychiatric unit. And so if I happen to meet anybody on meetings, I talk openly about it now, because in lots of respects, well, not in lots of respects, in every respect, it's a thing in the past. But at the time, it was such a thing for me that, I would have told very close friends at the time, but they would have only been very good friends. The vast majority of people wouldn't know. And I wouldn't have wanted people to know either.
And of course, to progress, we need this honesty. We need somebody like yourself who's been through it to stand up and say, this is what happened to me.
Yeah.
Will you tell us about the book, The Looney Bin, that more or less changed your direction?
It did, yeah. In lots of respects, that book saved my life. And it was one paragraph in the book that saved my life. The summer of '92 was a crisis summer for me. I'd been struggling my first year in St. Patrick's College, and I was due to go back into my second year, and my life was falling apart. My course, I wasn't something I'd wanted to do. I wasn't even coping with it. And I don't know where I bought the book or found it, but The Looney Bin Trip by Kate Millett, and I read it, and there was a paragraph, and I had never heard of this man before, Professor Ivor Browne, and it was only a short 1 or 2 sentences about him, and basically it said that I remember the words, he detests drugs treatment, and he's of the deeper schools, and that if somebody is experiencing difficulties, you see, I don't like the term mental illness. I prefer the term emotional distress. Okay. That if somebody has emotional distress, so-called mental illnesses, whatever, that there's a reason for it. And that was enough. That thing sparked off something in my mind, and I said, I got to find this man.
And you did. Within a very short time of being in his company, you have said that for the first time ever, you felt somebody understood you.
Yeah. It was a truly remarkable experience for me, because for the first time in my life, I felt somebody understood what was happening for me. Because I had told my story to psychiatrists at this stage in 2 psychiatric hospitals, and for them it was a chemical imbalance. They would listen to me long enough to kind of determine effectively, this is a simplistic way of putting it, but it's the truth, what colour pill to put me on. But this man, whatever conversation we had at the time, for the first time I thought, this man understands what's happened for me.
So what did he suggest you should do?
Well, at the time, I was in my second year in college at that time. It was Easter time of my second year, and he said, continue. I was still on the medication at that stage. Continue taking the medication. He said, I'll take you off the medication during the summer, and I'll start you on. He was doing a thing called Holotropic Breathwork, which is a regression therapy, brings you back to your childhood and that kind of thing. So I started that in the summer of '93. I came off Lithium on the 4th of July, which was Independence Day for me, and I was eased off it over a period of about a month or so, and I was due to come off it a few days later. But when the 4th of July came up, I thought to myself, this is Independence Day for me. So that was my independence, and since then, I haven't taken any psychiatric medication. So
it was the beginning of a big change, but with the regression therapy, Ivor Browne brought you back, and he brought you back to some very painful memories in your past now, and we understand you don't want to go into details today, and that's fine. But going back there must have been clearly very traumatic and very hard for you. Yeah. How did you get through that then?
The process of holotropic breathwork is a very intense form of regression therapy. You lie on a mattress, there's loud music played, and it lasts about 3 hours. It can be very intense. It can bring up very deep emotional material, and you kind of have to go through that. It comes up, and it can come up again when you're out in your everyday life, and you kind of have to be prepared to accept the pain, basically, because it brings up very painful stuff. But like I would have had the support of a therapist at the time, and so. But at the end of the day, there's no way around it in a sense. You have to go through the emotional. You have to allow this to happen, to come up and go through it, and then to deal with it. Because when it's there, as it was in my unconscious, it was bringing me to the edge.
Yeah.
How are you feeling now?
Oh, I'm feeling fantastic. I'm feeling fantastic. I've a brilliant life at the moment. I went back to college a few years ago, back to Mary Immaculate College in Limerick, and I had originally tried to get my qualification in St Patrick's College in Dublin. I got my qualification after a long time. It took me a long time, but I went back and I got it. And
you're speaking at UCC on the 14th of November.
Yeah.
That's pretty hard to get a seat to hear you speak.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't.
You're telling people not to give up.
Yeah, effectively. I wouldn't take all the credit for the thing being bunked out. I'm at the Critical Voices Network Conference. It's a 2-day conference. It's in UCC the 14th and 15th of November. My talk is on the 14th at 11:15, and it is actually booked out. But if anybody watching this morning is interested, I would say get in contact, because sometimes people do give up their places and places become available. So, yeah, that's it.
Well, Tommy, thank you so much for coming in this morning and telling us your story.
Okay, thanks a million.
Cheers, Tommy.
Thanks very much.
Sweaty palms, dry mouth, butterflies in the stomach, all are symptoms of feeling awkward in social situations. We'll be finding out what you can do to combat this shyness next.